Hey there, how's it going? Welcome back to another episode of Hipster Codes. This is Hipster GW. Last episode, I left you off by going over lists, sets, and tuples in Python. These are different sorts of very simple data structures, just ways to partner up different elements and objects into one sort of singular object that you can then loop through, right? You could do that with all three of those. Of course, lists, sets, and tuples all have their own ups and downs, pros and cons, so you might want to use certain ones in certain situations. Dictionaries are another way to store data, but they're different enough that I think it justified its own video, and also I was running out of time on the last one. So what are dictionaries in Python? Well, they are a key value pair type of structure. So what does that mean? Key value pair structure. What does that mean? Well, you're going to store multiple pieces of data with a key that's meant to be an identifier, and then a value, which is the actual element or object or data itself that you want to be the value that is attributed to the key. Right? So if you've ever dove into JSON, it looks a lot like JSON or a JavaScript object, but Python dictionaries are different enough that I think it's worth noting. So we can do my dictionary equals. So you're going to use the curly braces, sort of like a set. However, what's going to make the dictionary different is you're not going to do, different elements where you do 1, 2, and 3. What you're going to do is you're going to do a key to identify something, and then colon the value, comma, another key value, key colon value. So let's do an example. Let's do a movie. So if we want to store information about, let's say, Jurassic Park, we want to be able to figure out different pieces of information about that movie. So instead of my dictionary here, I'll actually call it my movie. My movie. Different pieces of information. So if we were dealing with multiple movies, we didn't know what the title was, but we knew it had a title. That's the purpose of using key value pairs. So the key usually is going to be similar or remain the same, right? So that's whenever you reach out to an API or something like that, you'll often get key value pairs, because if you reached out to an API and got a whole bunch of movies, you know every single movie has a title. You just don't know what that title is, so you need to figure out what it is. So if we wanted to go and give the movie title of Jurassic Park, we would do a string of title. Notice this is a string for the key. Unlike JavaScript, where it is just an attribute, so it looks like that. But that doesn't work here. If we do this, it's going to look for some sort of variable in our script called title, which we do not have. So we actually have to give it its own proper data type that is immutable. So integers, strings are much more common, but I have seen integers before. I actually saw tuples in one example, but most of the time it'll be a string. So we'll have the title for the movie, colon, the actual value. So Jurassic Park. Oh, Jurassic Party, that's a different movie. That's a completely different movie on a completely different website. So what we're going to do next is another piece of information. So every movie has a director. So we have, is it with a PH? I think it's with a V. Spielberg? Is it I before E or? I think it's like that. I'm probably wrong. We could also say the year it's released, and you could do 1993. 1993, I think, is the year it's released. And once you start any data structure, this is true for lists, tuples, and sets as well, you can start to break them up in between of all their different elements. So we could do the title here, the director key value pair there, the year key value pair there. This is actually a more common way that you would see, a larger sort of data structure or even a larger dictionary like this be set up. So this is how you might structure it. Now, I'll go over in another example in a minute, hopefully. You don't have to do just a primitive data type. You could actually do a data structure inside here. You could do a dictionary as the value or a list as the value. or a tuple as a value. Now, that list and that dictionary might have multiple pieces of information inside it. However, it's only one list, only one tuple, only one string. So there's only ever one key and only ever one value for key value pairs, right? You're not going to have like director, comma, actor, right? That isn't how it works. You find one key, colon, one value, repeat the process with a new key. So then you can identify it. So if we wanted to actually look through this and find the information, how do we access the information? Well, there's a couple of different ways in Python. The first way, and it's 9 times out of 10 my preferred way, is you're going to use square brackets. And the way that you do it is you will do the name of the variable or the object. So you'll do my movie here, square brackets, and then the name of the key. And remember, if we want to get the title, we'll do title like so, and it's a string. So now if we have this, we can print this out. And so we're finding the value of the key title in our dictionary saved to the variable named my movie. So now if we print this out and we run our script, you will see we get Jurassic Park printed to the screen. So pretty handy, right? Now, of course, if we have it in a script like this, this isn't very useful. What is useful is practicing how to do it. So whenever you get this information from some sort of API or some sort of larger module or something, and you don't exactly know what the information is inside, you can usually depend on the keys being the same. However, if we wanted to do a key that doesn't exist, let's say actors, womp, 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 we get a key error. But this is actually a very good thing. Errors are your friend because they tell you things that are wrong in your app before you pass it along to an end user, before somebody that's actually going to try and use your app. You get to fix it before they experience the problem. And in situations like this, it's actually very helpful. It says a key error, which means the key actors does not exist in our dictionary movies. And it even tells us here on line 10, right here, this is our problem. Of course, we could add actors. And just to prove you here, we could do a list or a tuple. We could do Laura Dern and Sam Neill and Jeff Goldblum. So now if we rerun this, now that we saved the file, added the actors key value pair, now you see we get our tuple returned. So remember, one tuple is the value for the key actors. So that's how you utilize it. But let's go and get rid of actors, or I'll just mute it out for a second because I'll bring it back in another minute. There is another way to access key value pairs, which is with the .get method. So the .get method specifically for dictionaries. You will see .get methods and functions throughout all sorts of packages in Python and other sorts of languages as well. It's a very common word. So specifically for Python dictionaries, if you do .get, it is wanting the key. So here you could give it the key, and so we could give it director. And it will return you the value. And so if I run this, it's going to, in this circumstance, look like it did the exact same thing. Here, I'll even do the title. So it's 100% the same. It's going to look 100% the same as a square bracket. So what's the difference, hipster? I'm glad you asked. Well, the difference is if we were to put in a key value pair that doesn't exist, remember, I muted out actors, so it doesn't exist as a key value pair. When we use the .get method, we get none. Why did we get none? So notice we didn't get an error thrown. Sometimes you want to get an error thrown. Actually, I think most of the time you want to get an error thrown because you want to know the problem. But this could mean two things. Either the value of your key value pair is none, or that key didn't exist. But why did it give us none? And it gave us none because this actually takes in two arguments. The first argument, which is the key, is the only mandatory argument, but we could give it a second argument, which is, as you see here, the default argument. So if this key does not exist, it's going to give us the default argument. And so we could say, no actors in this movie. All right, so it's just some sort of avant-garde film that's about plants and stuff. And so now you see, whenever we rerun the script, we try to get the key actors on the My Movie dictionary with the .get method. Actors is muted out, so it doesn't exist according to the script. So instead of giving us none or an error, it instead gives us the default argument. Again, now if we unmute it, we're still using the .get method. We're now going to instead get our actual value for our actors because we unmuted it, so now it exists inside this dictionary. However, using the .get method, you won't get an error if the key value pair doesn't exist, only with the square brackets. But I think that's preferred. But there are going to be circumstances where you aren't 100% sure that the key value pair exists. So in order to prevent your app from actually throwing an error that you've actually vetted and you make sure that the app is actually functioning correctly, it's just the specific way, for whatever reason, it's coded in a specific way that you can't be 100% sure that that key exists, then you might use the .get method. There are other circumstances where you might use it as well. So that's the difference between the square brackets and the .get method. The other difference is if you wanted to assign a new key value pair, you can't do it with the .get method. I'll show you how to do it with the square brackets real quick. So we could do My Movie. So we have actors. Let's also do a budget. And I don't know. It's probably like 200, maybe $150 million. Maybe $100 million. Whatever was a giant budget in 1993 is what it was. So if we wanted to assign a new key, and the key is budget, and we want the value to be 100 million as an integer, we're just going to use the assignment operator with just equals. So we're going to say My Movie square bracket budget, which is our new key, now equals 100, 100,000, 100 million. And so now let's go and print My Movie. And let's print it twice, actually, so you can see before and after. So before and after we have this, you can see I should have used the pretty print module, oh well. You can see we don't have the budget there, and then we actually added the budget key value pair there. This is also how you can reassign a value. So if we wanted to reassign the year, let's say we got the year wrong, and it was actually 1995. It wasn't. It was 1993, but let's just say it was 1995. Notice here the year key only exists once. You can't have more than one of keys are unique, right? So the year key, we then reassigned the value from 1993 to 1995. You can only do that with the square brackets. You can't do it with the .get method. The .get method doesn't provide that opportunity. So if we wanted to reassign year, we're going to get thrown an error because it's a syntax error. Cannot assign a function call where you meant double equals, da 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 da. It doesn't even understand what we're trying to do. And the same, you can't do it for something that doesn't exist, like the budget. See, we're going to get the same error. So that's the difference between the square brackets and the .get method. One other thing I wanted to show off is you can still loop through a dictionary. It's actually pretty interesting. There aren't always a ton of circumstances where you might do this, but you know what? Maybe you'll encounter a lot more than I do. And so I think it's good to know to have this skill in your tool belt whenever you're coding. So if we wanted to say for, I'm going to put I in My Movie. Very rarely do I do I. It's only whenever I can't describe what I'm actually looping through. Let's print I, and let's see what we actually get. And so if you just try to loop through your dictionary, what you end up getting is actually all of the keys. But if you ever need the keys, there's also a .keys method, which is going to give you the exact same thing, because I'm pretty sure the default functionality is it just gives you the keys. So I think these are both 100% the same. The reason I like to do this if I need the keys is because this is more explicit. However, these are the keys without context. So they're the keys without the values. You could also get the values without the keys. And so you see we have Jurassic Park, Steven Spielberg, 1993, and then the list of our tuple of our actors, absent the keys. So we have the values minus the keys. There are probably definitely circumstances out there where you might use them, but sometimes this, defeats the purpose of having the key value pairs, is you use the keys to identify the values. But if there are circumstances, you can get just the values in it. It gives you an iterable of these values. But there's one more thing you can use on Python dictionaries, which is the .items method. So let's see what the .items method gives us. And so notice we're getting tuples. Each tuple has two values. The 0th index, or the first value, is the key. And the second value, or the first index, is the value. So key value, key value, key value, key. And again, remember this tuple, there's only one tuple. So that's one value, so key value. Well, you know what? You can also unpack these. So we could say key, comma, value. And now instead of just having one identifier down in the scope of our for loop, we could print the key. Let's do an F string. We could say key is the key, value is the value. And so we can actually unpack them so we can use them inside our for loop. Now, do you have to call it key value pair? No, you could call this banana and coffee. And as long as these match up, you have the key is banana and the value is coffee. Right? It works 100% the same. Of course, this is a terrible naming convention because anybody else that looks at your code isn't going to understand what they're looking at. There might be ways to describe this better than key value, but key value is pretty explicit. Anybody that looks at this code that knows Python is probably going to have a pretty good idea of what's going on. But you can unpack them. And again, why were we able to do this? Well, because we knew every single tuple had two and only two values. It had a key and a value pair. I should say two and only two elements, because it had a key, value, key, value, key, value. There was never 0 keys or 0 values or multiple keys or multiple values. That's also why they use tuples with the .items method, so you don't accidentally add stuff to it. And whenever you can determine the number of elements inside some sort of a structure, you can unpack them like so. So this is actually a really cool thing you could do with dictionaries. So there's a lot more you could do with dictionaries. This is just scraping the surface. I think they're extremely useful. They're one of the most useful type of data objects, data structures that you can use in Python. So I think they're really cool, and hopefully you found this video helpful. If you did, leave it a like, a comment, and we'll see you in the next video. Later.